So now that we have our eyes and mouth all rigged up and ready to go, we're gonna start doing our head angle parameters. As you can see, what I'm first gonna do is I'm gonna take each component for each part of the face. So example, all of the mouth, warp deformers, and I'm gonna put them into their own categorized warp deformer that I like to call mouth, or that I will call eye left, eye right, or as I'm putting here, as you can see, I call them eyes. And I'll also do this with the head. I'll make one just called head. This is just so I have it all nice and organized and I can locate them easily. And yeah, and then we're gonna start putting together our folders that will contain our head angle parameters. So now I'm setting up our head angle folders that will contain stuff. So I'm gonna be doing head augmented physics today, which means that we aren't actually gonna put anything directly into our inputted head angles. So I'm making a folder right here, I'm calling head input, and I'm gonna put the input or the already existing head angle parameters that come when you create a live 2D file, and I'm putting them into head input. Now I'm just making a second folder and I'm gonna call it head physics, and in here is where we're actually going to affect the movement or do our head angles in. I'm duplicating the original head angle physics that came. Don't worry about this because we won't be actually duplicating the parameter name or parameter ID, so it'll be fine. And I'm just renaming them angle X physics or angle Y physics, so when we actually get into the physics window, we will be able to locate them easily. And now we're gonna actually do our jaw movements before we do anything else. As you remember, I put my all of my head components into a deform parameter that I called head. We're gonna use that so we can do the jaw. I'm gonna set it up so on each of the four corners, or at the beginning and the end of both parameters, that it will open. So when I open the jaw, you can see the actual jaw moves with the movement of your mouth. Looks really, really nice. And now we're gonna do our head angle physics. What we're gonna start is we're gonna grab our head line and our head base. These two will be linked via glue, refer to the gluing before. And as you can see, I have it set up in a very specific way. You can do this in your own sort of way you prefer. But I'm gonna set up a deform path tool. I'm gonna grab that. I'm gonna start setting dots along the entirety of the face. I'm gonna try to line them up the best I can as I go around the entire face. As you can see, I'm putting ones at the side of the jaw, the chin, right where the midpoint of the ears would be, where like cheeks would show, up by the temple, one a little bit higher up in the head, and then I'm gonna reconnect it to that middle one in the center. Now that we have both of them selected and ready to go, we're gonna add them to our head X physics. We're gonna add 3 keyframes to this parameter, one for the looking left, one for looking right, and we're gonna go from there. I'm gonna grab the temporary deform path tool, which as you can see is on the side right. It looks like a little grid button, and I'm gonna click that. I'm gonna temporarily start moving the face to a roughly, very, very roughly where I would like components to lay. Now that we have the rough components all set up, I'm gonna start using those deform path nodes that we had created, and I'm gonna start moving them and adjusting them more in locations where I want. As Head-Kun, you understand it comes with a head angle guide in it, so you'll be able to reference that. I like to pre-draw references as to where or how I would like my head angles to look. Not everyone does this, but it is really helpful, especially when you're just starting out and you're trying to learn. Now I'm grabbing the brush tool and I'm just gonna be slowly moving things in the headlines where I want. And yeah, it's just a lot of finicking and adjusting from here. Now instead of redoing everything on the other side of the angle X, we're going to go up to the top and we're going to find reflect motion. Once we do that, we're gonna wanna make sure it's set on our angle X, and then we're gonna just press OK. As you can see, it will relatively do a good job of reflecting the exact motion to the other side. There might be a little bit wonky here and there, but that's nothing you can't fix. It will save you a ton of time. So now I'm just gonna go in and I'm just gonna go with my brush tool and maybe select nodes individually, and I'm just going to adjust them to try and make them look nice and smooth again, and I'm just going to take my time doing this. Alright, so now that we have finished our angle X head parameters, we're going to work on doing our angle Y. It's very similar. We're going to grab our head base and our head line, and we're going to add 3 keys to the angle Y physics parameter. Once again, I'm just pulling up my head guide so I can show you guys exactly what I do. So now that we have the guide all set up and ready to go, we're gonna grab our head line and our head base, and we're gonna just, once again, grab the temporary deform path tool. And we are going to start moving the chin up and the rest of the face into position how we would like it to look. And we're going to, once again, very roughly get it into the shape using the temporary deform path. And now I'm going to grab the head angle down guide, and I'm going to set that up, and then I'm going to do my head angles down. It's the exact same thing. We're going to grab the base head line, and we are going to go from there. Alright, so now that we have our head angles all set up for the base head and the head line, let's do our head shadow. We're pretty much repeating the exact same step, selecting only the head shadow, adding its keyframes to the angle X, doing angle X, and then we're doing the exact same for the angle Y after reflecting using our angle X. So just do exactly what we did for the previous and you will be fine, and follow along. Now it's finally time to synthesize our corners for our head angles. So what you're going to do is you're going to select both your head base and your head line. We're going to do these first. When you're looking down to the corner, you're going to want to rotate your chin slightly down so that it's angled more down. And the same will go with when you look up, your chin raises, so therefore your head will be on a slightly more angle. You can use the temporary deform path tool here to adjust where the jawline sits and where components such as where the eyes would line up would go, and just go from there. You can use the reflect, just I wouldn't recommend it for the most part. Be careful because it can result in some wonkiness here, so just keep that in mind for if you want to use reflect motion. And as you can probably imagine, we're just doing the exact same thing I did for the diagonal headlines or the synthesized cornered head angles for the shadow. So now, like I said earlier, what we're going to do is we're going to select everything for the eyes that is not already inside a deform parameter. So as you can see, like I'm just making sure that we select the warp deformers for the physics for the eyes and stuff. And then we're gonna all put that into its own warp deformer called eyes. Now that we have that all set up, we're going to add it to our X and Y parameter. We're gonna start with our X parameter like I always do, just as my personal preference. And we are going to, once again, start setting it up with the warp deformer that we have to look left and right. As I've said previously, I do have my guide, so I'll just pull up my guide again to give me an idea of where the eyes are supposed to fall. And now that we have our guide all up, we're going to take our warp deformer and we're going to just start squishing it into the shape relative to our eye. You can see I'm moving it sideways and I'm getting it all set up and into place. I'll also grab some of the deformer and squish it from there. I might even activate the temporary warp deformer, and as you can see, I'm scooting it over so it has a bit more of a rounded shape. Yeah, I'm just going to be doing that for this eye, and then once we get to the other one, I'll let you know. Now that we've done the eye in one direction, we have to do it in the other direction. I'm going to bring it over to the other side, the parameter, and then I'm going to reflect the actual guide image so I have it in the same place. I just want to make sure you line up your jaw to where it should be. And from there, we take the warp deformer for the eye that we were just working on. And we're going to bring the eye over to where it should lie. If anything's blocking your, such as the nose and stuff, you can hide those layers just so you don't see them. We're just going to bring the eye over, see, stretched out a little bit, and I will adjust it into position so it looks good. Now we are just going to repeat the exact same process with the other eye, putting all the parameters into its own warp deformer and doing the exact same thing. Now we're going to grab both of the eye parameters, deform warp parameters that we had made before, and we're going to add them to the Y. Why we're going to do this is so that we can get them adjusted both into similar locations. We are going to move them up and down slightly. Of course, I haven't done any of the warping yet. I'm going to grab the temporary warp deform and I'm going to now adjust these so they look slightly more up or slightly more down. When you're looking up and down the inner corners, your eyes will normally move up and down along with the outer corners. So you can use the guide as a reference, or you can just kind of wing it like what I'm doing. And now it's time to synthesize the corners. We're going to first synthesize corners, make sure that the top is pressed to angle X physics and the bottom is Y. And you'll be able to see it kind of gets them relatively to where we need them. However, we still have some adjustments we're going to need to do. And now that we have that sorted out, we're going to start adjusting them. As you can see, I'm going to now bring the eyes upwards. And I'm even going to rotate them slightly because our head is rotated. I want to make sure that the eyes would follow where the rest of the head would go. It's not perfect, so I'm still going to have to do some more adjustments. I'm going to grab the temporary warp deformer and I'm going to just start adjusting where the eyes would sit upon like the brow line and along the top of the nose ridge line, and I'm just going to adjust it from there. And I'll just do that for the other four corners. This you cannot reflect, because if you reflect it, you will see it becomes very wonky. We're just going to repeat the exact same steps for the brows, put them in their own unique warp deformer, and then just adjust them into positions in the X, Y, and diagonals. And once again, we are just going to repeat the exact same process for the nose. However, with the nose, we are going to directly use the meshes like we did with the head shapes. I always adjust the nose line itself first, and then I'll adjust the shadows or the top highlight for the nose that I want to use. I also have underneath a flat color of the noses or the skin base tone. I do this just so I can hide components from the mouth or other things that I don't want to be shown underneath. Now we're going to start working on the ears. I have my ears divided into two components on this model, the ear lines and the ear colors. I do this so I could adjust the positions of the inner earlobes and stuff of the ears, but I'm not going to show you that this time. It's just something I prefer to do. Once again, we're going to make our warp deformer for it. We're going to add it into our parameter setting, and we are going to start with the X and move into the Y. I'll squish them into position relative to where I want them. I'll also select certain sections of the parameter so I can make it look more accurate to how an ear would look in a shrinking perspective. Once I'm satisfied with how the ear looks going hidden behind the face, we're gonna have to do the ear coming out in front of the face. So for the ear coming out in front of the face, I'm first going to stretch the ear slightly, and then I'm going to place it relatively to where I want. But as you can see, you can't see the ear, it's hidden behind the head. So for this, we're gonna have to refer to what is known as the draw order. So the draw order is pretty simple. You just have to remember, when it comes to the draw orders, you have to have the original layer that has the illustration or the art mesh on it. You can't use draw orders via warp deformers. So you're gonna wanna make sure you add both your line art layer for your ear and your line base color for your ear to your XY angle parameters. And as you can see up at the top, I have my draw order here. It's a small section. It's got a little dot to the side of it. And I'm just going to increase it to 501 around where I would like to place the ear showing up. Once we are happy where the ear position is, I'm going to actually duplicate the ear and the parameters that we had made for it, the warp deformer and everything. So I'm going to select all of it, and then I'm going to press Control-C, Control-V to copy it, and then I'm going to just reflect it onto the other side using the same technique we did with the reflecting the eyes. As you can see, it shows up perfect. Now I'm just going to do the head up and down angles for the ears, and then I'm going to do the diagonal the exact same way we've done the rest of them. Okay, so now that we have that all sorted out, we're going to go up to the modeling tab and we're going to scroll down to see physics parameters. We're going to open up the physics menu and we are going to set up our augmented physics for our head. So we're going to go to the top and we're going to add in a new parameter. I'm going to call it augmented head physics. One of the base inputs you can do is called head input. It'll show up with the angle X, the angle Z, body X. We don't need all of these. The only thing we need is the angle X, so I'm going to remove everything else. And our angle X is currently set to position. We would like to have that set to angle. And we're going to leave it at 60% effectiveness. Now we're going to go down to the physics model settings, which will give us our pendulum. I have my head X physics saved. You can do this by pressing the add button just below. So I'm going to pull it up and I'm going to show you exactly what I do. My settings, I like to have my duration set to 10, the shaking set to 0.8 or 80%, the reaction set to 1, and the duration, the overall is set to 1.5. Then we're going to head back up and we're going to go to the output. This is where we will tell it what we're affecting. So we're going to bring in our angle X physics that we had, and then we're going to increase the output so it actually shows the movement. We're going to do the exact same for the Y. And I'm just going to do some minor adjustments here to get things the way I'd like them to be. Alright, so we have one last thing to do for this part of the video. We'll be covering the mouth physics later. We're going to actually do the angle Z. So we're going to select everything for our head angle that is not already within a warp deformer. And we're going to add them all into their own warp deformer called HeadZ. We're going to then add the HeadZ to the angle Z physics, and then we're going to just rotate it side to side. Go back into your physics setting, and we're going to add our HeadZ Physics, augmented HeadZ Physics. We're going to create a new parameter and we're going to add it in. And I'm going to pull up my already pre-existing head angle Z components. So as you can see, it takes in both the angle X in its position set to 60%, and we want to take in the full angle Z input. We want to reflect our angle X. So this is just so it does the opposite as to what we would expect it to do. It gives you a really nice bounce. So now that we have that done, we're going to go back down to our physics model settings. Of course, I already have my head Z angle Z physics done, so I'm going to import it. As you can see, it's 10, 8, 1, and 5. Pretty much exactly the same as the head angle X. And then we're going to go back up to our output settings. We're going to go and add in our angle Z, our head physics angle Z. And we're going to have to increase the output just so we get that effectiveness, but you can see there's like a little wobble to the head as I move it side to side. And that's it. That's all you need for your head angles, besides the mouth. The mouth is a little tricky, so we're gonna do that in its own separate video.